So hi everyone who's waiting. We're going to kick off very quickly. In the meantime, if you guys can just pop that QR code on the screen there and get some free resources sponsored by Microsoft, that'd be amazing. And I'm just going to pop in that comment there in case you wanted to link straight to the resource site. And this is just for you to register your interest with us as well, just to let Microsoft know that we're doing a good job and things like that. So if you could register, that'd be amazing.
Should we wait a couple of minutes?
Yeah, totally up to you. We have a few people on now. So since we're waiting, I'll just do a little intro. So we have with us Ishan, and he will be going through the first session in a 3-part series on IoT with us. So Azure offers several services to make handling IoT devices and data. And in this session, he will walk with us some architecture designs.
Mm-hmm.
So people are starting to trickle in. If you're just watching this now, if you want to pop in that QR code or that link that we have put in the comment box, you can get some free educational resources, some learning guides, courtesy of Microsoft.
And not only just you get a lot of resources now, if we have enough people signing up for that, or actually verifying that we actually did this session, we might be able to provide more sessions, more resources in the future.
Okay, so should we maybe kick off?
Yep.
I see people starting to trickle in.
Yeah. Perfect.
So thank you guys so much, as always, for joining, and I'll hand it over to you, Sean.
Thank you. And that's fine. Thank you. So today we are going to talk about IoT and the basics of the architecture and how to get basically a signal to dashboard. So this is a introduction in a 3-part series, and at the end of the 3-part series, we're actually also going to have a workshop, but more on that later on. So my name is Ishan Jain. I am Cloud Solution Architect at Microsoft for Data and AI. So what I do mostly is help customers design their architecture and optimize their current solutions. And occasionally try to, migrate from on-premises, so from their own data centers to Azure. So this is what I'm going to talk about more deeply. I'm going to talk about a bit of introduction to the topic, go through a lot of architecture designs, how it actually fit into your current architecture, and how does it look with the data analytics, with the IoT and everything. And then next is what reference architectures we have in Microsoft and how they look, and so on. And then I will try to do a demo of IoT Hub. So what is Internet of Things, or IoT? If you think after, it is nothing new. We have been using technologies that we group today as, or under the IoT umbrella. We have been using this type of technologies for a long time. If you come from the industry, you probably have heard something called PLC, or programmable logic controllers. I remember 16 years ago when I was working for a big company which worked with PLC and embedded. Uh, the tech that back then, even then, was a lot similar to what we have today. The difference is that we have had a lot of advancement in the tech. Like if you think after, back in 60s, when we were having our first space program, when they put a man on the moon, the whole program had less compute power than what you have in your hand in your smartphones. So that's one of the biggest leaps we have had during the time. And for me, IoT, as I say, is just an umbrella term for sensors, software, and other embedded tech we must use to connect and monitor things over the internet. And before we coined the term IoT, this was usually done on the on-premise in their own data centers. But today, because we have cloud, so it becomes internet. So let's start by looking at one of the simplest architecture when it comes to IoT. We have a single sensor somewhere. It might be a temperature sensor, it might be a pressure sensor or something. And let's say it's just a switch. And we connect this device to IoT Hub. The IoT Hub then can perform several actions on the data or SAT telemetry. We send it to it. In this case, I'm choosing to store the data in blob storage only. So the IoT Hub has a built-in event grid, which will receive millions of messages and concurrently and dispatch them to blob storage at the speed the storage service can handle it. So we are going to buffer as much as we can in the IoT so that nothing gets lost. So let's say if you have millions or even trillions of sensors sending data at once, so IoT Hub can handle that. And in the end, we have Power BI, which will pick up let's say, the data from this blob storage and visualize it in form of reports or dashboards. So this is a very simple way, like 4-step way to show how data goes from a sensor to a dashboard. But let's move into a more industrial architecture. This is still a very simplest view of the industrial environment. We have a ton of devices. Let's say these are manufacturing robots. And because these robots don't have, like, let's say, internet connectivity, so we connect them to a device called IoT Edge, which is here. And we can do this because we probably don't want to expose these robots to the internet. Because the more we expose to the internet, the more security vulnerability surface we have. And now because we have all this connected to a single IoT Edge, so it's only a single device which connects to the IoT Hub, we are through a single tunnel instead of having multiple tunnels. So we are minimizing our attack surface. And IoT Edge is also useful, as I said before, if your device is not able to connect to internet. So IoT Edge can have its own GPIOs, which can connect to the device in question or sensor in question, and then connect to the IoT Hub. And here we can see how we differ, like what's on premises, like in a, let's say, in a building, which has temperature sensors or your manufacturing factory, and what's in Azure. And now let's say we connect a lot more stuff, because it's not only manufacturing industry which use IoT today, it's everything. So we can have dashboards, we can have, in this case, I chose like a vehicle, like a truck driver. A truck has a sensor for what speed it's going, what's the temperature of the engine, what's the weather, what's the road condition, how the brakes are doing, how the engine is doing, how the transmission is doing, how the driver is driving, like everything. We can gather all that data and send that to through a single device, in this case IoT Edge, to, let's say, IoT Hub. And then we can use that data to either plot the data in our Power BI, in this case I'm choosing to do it, or we can do a lot of more analysis, like do preventive maintenance. So because we know what speed the truck usually drives, how much distance it has done, how the engine is doing, how the brakes are doing, how everything else is doing, so we can see how much wear and tear we are getting, so that we can actually send it for maintenance before it actually breaks down. So we can have planned maintenance instead of ad hoc, we need it to do now. And next, I chose an example where we have like healthcare. We have these, like I have here, we have these Fitbits or fitness bands. And as you know, these fitness bands or small healthcare devices, as it's called in the industry, has gained popularity in just 5-6 years. And think, like if a doctor or a general GP or a surgeon or whoever in a medical professional can and give you one of these devices and let's say monitor your health in like your blood pressure, your blood oxygen, and things like that. And from there, just alert you. Okay, now you're getting lightheaded, so maybe you should sit down, or your blood oxygen level is too low. Maybe you should come in for a checkup. So you don't need to actually schedule checkups, or you don't actually need to schedule checkups to just check your blood sugar or blood oxygen level and then see what's happening. Instead, you get a more concise data over time of, because different time of day can be different outcomes. And so you can actually prevent a lot of diseases like a heart attack by just slapping on a wristband and monitoring it. And think how much we can actually do, like the people who live in rural area don't have the same type of medical care we have in cities. And let's step back to the simple architecture we looked at before and see if we can improve it. Here, if you remember, this is like we had this industrial area, which is still very simple, so to say. And if we keep going, we can replace these robots with surveillance, with vehicle data, with healthcare data, light, temperature, anything we can measure, we can actually plug in. Let's say like you're working in a nuclear plant. We need to measure the radiation levels every time. And then if the radiation levels comes to a specific level, then we can alert the environment. Okay, it's unsafe to be here. We need to do radiation, and then we can come back. So things like these are very simple scenarios, but IoT makes it possible to do it in a very different level. And it's not always you have like your standard internet. So maybe you have like a cellular network or a LoRaWAN, which is more of a LoRaWAN is a specialized network for IoT. So which is more of a long range network. So you can connect the devices to not only via our standard internet, but also like your mobile network or LoRaWAN. And then we can add a lot of other services to the architecture. And these services can be divided in a lot of different categories. Like here, I chose to call it sensors. So because these are the sensors input we are getting, sensory input. And then we have gateways. It can be IoT Edge, it can be your LoRaWAN gateway, it can be other gateways which act as a gateway which sends the data to IoT Hub. And then IoT Hub in turn will send the data to services that can compute. So it can be a logic app, it can be a stream analytics, it can be even a Kubernetes cluster which computes, or a Spark cluster. Then we need to store the data somewhere or create messaging on top of the data, alerts, for example. If it is like a harsh environment, as we talked about before, so it will need to create an alert at once. And at the end, we have presentation layer, where we present the data in either dashboards, custom applications, anything. And here is a reference architecture, which I have taken down from Microsoft's architecture solution portal. So here, it is actually the same thing as this, but in a little bit different layout. In the left, we have input devices, which can either send the data by themselves or via IoT Edge. The device will send the data to IoT Edge either via so you can provision your devices either directly to the IoT hub or via a DPS, device provision service, and then IoT hub can send the data to stream analytics, to functions, or actually store the data in storage for depending on what type of path we need. Do we need a hot path? Do we need a warm path? Or do we need a cold path? Hot path is like it needs to be done real time. Warm path is it can be done real time, but it's not a must have, it's a good to have. But we need to process the data as soon as possible. Or the cold in this is we can process it whenever we have need. So we don't need it actually now, but we can just store the data for now. And depending on what type of path we choose, we have different services. It can be logic app, which does something. It can be, if it's a cold path, for instance, it can be like storing just in a Cosmos DB. If it's a warm path, it might be Synapse, where you actually store data in your data warehouse solution. Or if it's like a hot path, it can be, it does some machine learning on it at once. And then lastly, we put it into presentation. It can be integrated in your existing business intelligence or other integrations. It can be displayed in a custom web app or a mobile app. It can be displayed in Power BI reports. And most important of everything is to make everything secure. Azure Security Center actually has a special component for IoT. So we have a base plate, or so to say, a foundation with security always. And if you use Azure Security Center, you are actually getting a lot of alerts if you do something which is unsecure. And by just using one more service, it makes your infrastructure, IoT infrastructure, a lot secure than it would have been. Let's move into how we do like data analysis or real-time analysis with something like, as you can see, it's still a similar architecture. But so IoT in Azure doesn't actually need a separate flow or separate infrastructure. It can be part of your existing infrastructure. Like if you have a data lake, data storage, and so on. So we can just jack in the parts we need and then reuse the infrastructure we had. So here we have something from like a data factory is gathering data from several places like a log file from databases and so on, and storing it to data lake. And data lake is then things like what do you call Databricks or Spark cluster is taking the data, or Synapse or a data warehouse is taking the data and analyzing it, putting into analysis services, and then into Power BI. So what we can do, we have our sensors here, which we send the data from the sensors to IoT Hub. And IoT Hub can either store it, actually reuse what infrastructure we had, and for example, in this case, store the data in data lake. And from there, it's what we already have established before we even had IoT. So we can reuse the infrastructure. So as you can see, a lot of components, as I show in this architecture, is also here. So we have the same things, but in a different architecture design. And if we have a modern application, it's still a similar architecture. It's not going to change fundamentally. So here we have input, which needs to be identified in some cases, like authenticated and so on, so that anything can send the data to you. Then we have a network layer, which does the network security, load balancing, make sure that everything is there's no congestion on your side. And then we have our ingestion control. It can, for example, in this case, we have like IoT Hub here. And then from ingestion, the data is sent over to compute layer. And then the compute will actually send it to like storage for long-term retention. So again, it is very similar. If we take, let's take an example on how this can be. Let's say you want to create a new application which only does is an API, and it is hosted in Azure. So you will have a user or an app that can identify itself with, let's say, Azure Active Directory B2C. And then after you have received a token, you can then use that token to call a method or a endpoint in REST API. So first, it will be the application gateway, which will handle it and see if it's a valid request, if it's need to be load balance and so on. And then we will probably use API management to, for instance, process the authentication. Yes, the user is who he says he is or she. And then we will ask maybe a logic app or a function to process the request itself. And that the function or logic app can call a database to view the data or to get the data which is stored to send back. So what I'm trying to say is that just because we are talking IoT doesn't mean we need to reinvent the wheel. It is like IoT architecture is very similar to what we already have in other applications, be it API, be it a mobile app, and so on. Now let's take a look at IoT Hub. But Azure IoT Hub enables secure and reliable connection between your IoT solutions and devices. So you have a solution on your right side in this case, and then devices on your left side, or what I call in this case, things. IoT Hub can also help you to route the device data securely and also help you to scale the solution as it's needed. Because when you start, you might need only a small solution. But as you grow, the project grows, you will need more servers, more services. IoT Hub supports a lot of standard protocols. So you can do MQTT, you can do AMPQ, or you can do HTTPS. IoT Hub also supports MQTT or AMQP over WebSockets. So these are like very, very common protocols. So you can actually have any device which talks MQTT, AMQP, or HTTPS to talk to IoT Hub. So you don't need to actually invest into specialized hardware, so to say, just because you want to use it with Azure. And then you can use like X509 certificates. They can be either signed by a standard CA or they can be even self-signed. So this is how we secure our IoT devices. either by symmetric keys or by certificates. And then we have, as I talked about before, DPS, and device provisioning service, which can be used to simplify provisioning of devices. So you can say that you just need to tell the device, okay, this is the IoT hub you need to connect to, this is your ID, and this is your private key. And that will take care of everything. So DPS will take care of provisioning the device, sending the firmware it needs afterwards, and so on. Let's look at a demo. So let's see if it works. So this is the Azure portal I have. So this is, it opens when so this is the first page I see when it opens. So I have customized a bit, but let's start by going here. Sorry, let's start by creating a new resource group. So what I do, I go to the resource group in the left and then click on create. And always it shows the subscription I want to create in because that's my default subscription. And then let's give it a name. So I try to give my things a very descriptive name. So CLL for Cloud Launch and Learn, because that's where we're doing the session. IoT, what it's about, and then 2102, which is 2021 February. So I always give them a date so that I know when it happened, when I created it, and so on. And then as we are in Dublin, so that will be North Europe. Tags. So it's always good to give your things a tag. All the services, all the resource groups, resources, and so on, a tag in Azure. So my favorite tag is project. So I can say that it's a CL Cloud Launch and Learn project for me. So now if I want to search or if I want to see how much I spent for preparing for this session, so I can just search for this tag, which is called project CLL. And I can see it's validated, so I can just create it now. So there it is. And let's add a new resource, which is IoT Hub. And here you can read more about what it is, what type of plans it has, and who created the plan, who published it, who is actually doing, so to say, so what type of ID you need to use when you're talking to Microsoft, and so on. And I believe there are some reviews also, yeah. So let's create one. So because I went through my resource group and clicked on add, so it actually filled in a lot of information for me. The subscription, the resource group, and I'm still in Dublin, so I will use North Europe again. And let's call it something. So CLL IoT Hub 2102. Again, same definition or same way to name it, CLL for Cloud Launch and Learn, the type of services it is, and then when I created it. Next, it asks for what type of networking I want to use. Do I want to use public endpoints or private? Private is when you're using something like ExpressRoute or a VPN, so some sort of VPN tunnel. Then you can use a private endpoint. But today, as I haven't set up a VPN tunnel, so let's just use public. Management. So here you can choose what type of pricing tier, how many of units you want to create. So you can essentially load balance. If you want Defender, again, security feature or not. So there is a free tier, which is more than enough for most people. But because I already created free tier and you're only allowed to create one per subscription, so I will create a standard for now. And here I can see how much it costs per month, and then how many messages per day I can do, how much a Defender is going to cost me, and if I can send, like if IoT Hub can get the data from device, if I can route the message, if I can send that data back to, or like do some calls to the device. If I can use IoT Edge and so on. Yeah, we don't need to bother about this for now. Again, same thing, just so that I can actually see, so that I'm able to filter the things which is labeled CLL, or I can see the budget, how much I spent on it. Next is if it will review, let me review, and then I can create the service. What this step also does, it also validate your input. So sometimes if you have a wrong input, it will actually tell you here. But as I can see, it's passed, so let's create it. It does take like a minute or two to create. So let's go to the one I created before. Not this one. Yeah, let's do this one actually. Yeah. So this is how IoT Hub welcome screen looks like. So you have a lot of like things that can points to different documentation or pages on internet, how you can do things. You have the basic information up here, like if it's active or not, where it is located, which subscription, the tags, the name, which is important, so the URL to it, what pricing tier, how many I have it in it, and then device stream, which is something new. If we go down to shared access policies, we have different type of actors now. So it is the IoT Hub owner. You can have a service which like a third-party service which needs to connect to it. It can be a device, so the device that sends the data, or something that's need to only read the data, or something that needs to read and write. So you have different type of predefined roles. And if you want to use custom, so you can actually just add your custom stuff. If we go to identity, you can leverage things like Azure Key Vault to let this IoT Hub identify it as a managed identity. So for instance, like if you have other services, like you need to talk to functions, you need to talk to storage, you need to talk to what else, like Event Hub, Event Grid from IoT Hub. So it will identify it as its own managed identity, its own service, instead of you managing the service account, password, and so on. As this is just a demo, I will not turn it on for now. Here you can do pricing, so you can change the pricing. And because I created a standard, so I cannot go back to basic. And here we can see differences in different services. But S1 is fine for us now. And then here I can also change how many units I need here. Networking, same, again, same. So you can actually change the networking, so you don't need to decide everything when you're creating. You do have a possibility to change it after you created it. Under certificates, you see you can upload your own certificates. And as I talked earlier, like X509 certificates, you can upload it here. Built-in endpoints are like event hubs and stuff. So IoT Hub actually provisions an event hub for you, so that it can manage all the messages we're getting. All the trillions of devices which will send a message to it can actually be handled by this IoT Hub. You can set in failovers, like if something happens to North Europe, so it will fail over to West Europe, so Amsterdam, so that you have a business continuity. Just because we have some problem in Dublin doesn't mean you need to not have your business running. Under properties, you can get some things like the standard stuff, which resource group it is, the whole resource ID, where it's located again, the subscription and so on. And under logs, you can actually put in so that it can be also either read only or delete. So you can lock it down so that nobody can actually change the settings or delete it. If you go to IoT devices here, as you can see, I have already started using this IoT hub, and it has 3 devices. These are attribute name, so something I gave them myself. So PNP stands for plug and play. So this I will talk more about in next session, but just to give you an idea. And P, I'll call it, it's a physical device. So I have 2 physical and 1. But what you can do to simply add a device, click on add up here or new, give it a name. So again, PNP, it's just something I use. O3 as in third device, S for simulated, and A, the first instance of it, because as I'm testing a lot, I might screw up something, so need to recreate. So, but I want to keep them apart. Here I can choose what type of authentication I want to use. So if it's a symmetric key, or if I want to use my own X519 self-signed certificate or a CSN certificate. I will just use symmetric key and auto-generate. I can click this away and then you can type it in your own key, but let's do auto-generate for getting a best random key. And then I can choose if I want to connect it to IoT Hub or not. And here I also can set if it's actually part of several devices. Now I don't think I have anything that can identify it as itself as a parent device, so I cannot set it here. Let's just save. And here it is. And if I go in here, I can simply copy my connection string from here. So let's see what a connection string actually holds. So it has the host name of the IoT hub, the device ID I gave it to, and gave it to it, and then the secret key or the shared access key it has. So that's all it's needed. If it's a IoT hub enabled device, it will be happy with this. If it's not, then you might need to do some custom application that can use this to connect to the IoT hub. So for instance, IoT Edge will be that type of device. And if you go back, and here is a place where you can add your IoT edges. I don't have anything set up right now for that, so I won't be able to show you this. And here's a very important step is where you can actually set your message routing. So if you remember, like I talked about different paths, like using stream analytics function or storage and so on. This is where here you set it up. Okay. Let's just do a storage endpoint. I have there something. Let's create a new container. Batch size is 100 and chunk size of the window is 100. That's fine. I want to have it in JSON so that I can debug it. Avro is a bit more binary format. And JSON is plain text. And this is how the file names will be. Create. Usually don't take that long, but as you can see, I'm on Microsoft Azure Preview. Because I'm internal Microsoft, we got a different set of servers, which might be a bit differently scaled. And there it is. So I have a storage endpoint now. And I can send telemetry messages, lifecycle events, train change events, and so on. Let's just do telemetry for now. Enable route. I can do a test route. Cannot create route without name specified. Let's call it just telemetry storage, and let's test it. The test matches match the query, good, and then I can save. So here I created a simple telemetry which goes to storage. Let it keep working. If we go down here, we have different things like security. Okay, something is wrong here. Anyway, here you can see a lot of security overview and so on. You can create security alerts. I'm guessing it's not going to let me either. What do you in the settings? So you can create your custom alerts. You can create data collection, how to collect the data, and so on. So here I just set it up very quickly to send the data to a IoT Hub to a log workspace I already created before. So if we go back, so now we can create custom alerts. It already have a one group, and in there we can create custom alerts. Let's name it. So it can be any of these, like number of devices to cloud, number of messages to is not allowed in range. So if you like exceed the amount of message you're sending or things like that, so you can set up custom alerts, because it can be a rogue device is sending data. You can identify things like that. Does it give me security dashboard now? Yes. So that was the missing. So here I can see like how many devices I have connected, how many hubs I have in my subscription, how many resources. And it shows me also like severity of different threats I might have opened up to. Because this is a brand new, so I only created it like a couple of days back, so it doesn't have that much. And then again, we have monitoring, again relying on the same principles. Yeah. So that's basically IoT Hub. I will go more deeper into like IoT Hub and the device provisioning service in the next session. And so let's open to the questions. Dana, we don't have any questions?
I don't think so. So let me just see here. That was great, though. Thanks so much. When I think of IoT, I don't think of nuclear facilities. Wouldn't be the first thing that comes to mind, but it's good to know we have that in place.
Yeah, but think about it. Like everything today is connected to internet, even your toaster.
That is true.
That is IoT.
Chernobyl would not have happened if we had IoT services.
Or if you think just a couple of years back, Fukushima in Japan, it would have been much bigger disaster if it was not connected in the way it was.
Yeah. So there's definitely some very interesting use cases here. That was absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much. And everyone, so if you hadn't had a chance to get to this link, use that QR code or pop that link in there for some free resources. And to hear more about IoT, at the same time for the next 2 weeks, we're going to have the next 2 sessions. Thank you, everyone, again for coming. And of course, thank you for presenting so well. Thank you so much.
Yes, as Dana said, we have a session next Thursday, which is where I'm going to talk more about IoT Dev Kit and like how to connect a real life IoT device to IoT Hub using device provisioning and so on. And then also next week, I'm going to talk about a bit about the IoT Dev Kit simulator we have. And then in 2 weeks, I will talk about more how like a SaaS service works, like IoT Central, and how we can actually use digital twin to do stuff. And lastly, in March, 20th of March, we also have an IoT workshop where we are actually going to put all the sessions together in a single workshop, and then you will have chance to go on and do labs, actually get your hands dirty to how IoT works with Azure.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Here are some good links. So basically what you need to remember is docs.microsoft.com and everything else is underneath it. And so like I talked about Azure Architecture Center, so where I got my architecture reference. You have docs.microsoft.com/learn, where you can actually find a lot of trainings free of charge. And then if you don't have a Azure account, you can actually create a free account on Azure.com. So thank you.
Thanks so much.
Here's my website. You can reach me out on LinkedIn or GitHub. And I will post this deck on my website in coming week.
And just so everyone knows, this session is recorded on YouTube. So if you ever want to come back and refresh your memory on anything covered now, you can always just refer back to the channel. So thanks, everyone. Cheers.